Then you enjoy. A quick thank you to the T5 peeps. Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Cat Crab Lobster, DuckMachine, Try Again 95, Astraya the Dreamer, Mezec, Feudic Jarl, Germanchemist, Casper Arnholtz, and Chaos to Must. Thank you very much. Story number 1. Locker Talk, or How a Succubus Earns Hazard Pay. Written by Glitchkey. You look like crap, Belle, Lil said as she glanced at Belle, before going back to digging through her locker. Various odds and ends appeared and vanished in short order while she continued speaking. Haven't seen you in a week either. Bad summon or She paused to leer at Belle. A really good one. Belle sighed and slumped into the chair. Bad, she said, taking a moment to breathe before leaning forward and resting her arms on her head on the table. Does not even begin to describe it. Nah, found it. Lil pocketed a card of some sort from her locker before slamming the door shut, doing an about-face and leaning back against it. Sounds like a nasty one, then. She pushed off, then walked over and sat next to Belle. Gonna take a trip down to Restoration and Resurrection. Sounds like your last summon might warrant a free treatment. I wish it was that good of a summon. No. She wiggled a bit as she could see Lil without lifting her head from the table. No. I'm heading straight to Demon Resources and putting in for some hazard pay. And a bit of bleep. Lil's eyes widened and flicked up and down as she inspected Belle's form. Doesn't look like it could have been that bad. Of course not. Belle slapped the table. Fecker didn't touch me at all, you know. She looked up and met Lil's gaze. The bags under Belle's eyes stood in stark contrast to her otherwise immaculate beauty. Didn't touch me at all. If DR has any sense at all, they'll blacklist him too. As it stands, Belle continued, shifting a bit to resting her chin on her hands, I'm gonna go visit Mum and have her treat me to a good round of fast food. I'm absolutely starving. Her stomach growled, the accompaniment of her statement almost reminiscent of a dissatisfied hellhound. And she has a good standing contract in Vegas that should work just fine. Okay, now I have to know. Lil leaned forward, eyes glowing slightly in the dim light. The heck happened? Belle grumbled incoherently a bit before sitting up straight. There is a really bad one. You sure? Seeing Lil nodding vigorously, she continued. Okay, so, I get summoned with a week-long time frame, right? Not that uncommon, especially when someone's really bent up. She reached up and twiddled with a lock of her hair before shoving it behind a cheap hair clip. But this one started off with red flags. The first thing he did after summoning me was, don't laugh. Belle rolled her eyes as she said this. He handed me some clothes and told me to cover up. Lil shrugged. Roleplay, isn't that uncomfortable? No, these were just normal clothes. Belle sighed again. Her shoulders slumped. I thought the same at first too, but then he told me to make myself at home for now and walked out. She disentangled one of her hands and began tapping on the table. To, go to work. He just left you alone? Belle stood up and began pacing, her hands and arms moving as she spoke. Just left me. I figured, hey, maybe he's setting up some kind of housewife play. I've seen it a few times before. She stopped for a moment and then turned to face Lil, hands on her hips. So I did the normal for that, cleaned the place a bit, cooked up a nice meal that works. He gets home, we start eating, and he starts making small talk. No way, Lil shuddered. A human making small talk with a demon. Belle resumed her pacing back and forth as she stalked. Yeah. And then, after dinner, he sat down to watch some TV. I, of course, joined him. She giggled a bit, the sound unnerving in how it echoed through the room. Tried to rile him up, maybe get him interested. Somehow. She stopped pacing again, foot tapping angrily as she spat out the rest. Somehow. Nothing fazed him. Not even when I sat in his lap towards the end. She stomped her foot on her tapping stopped. He just sat there, didn't even react. Ow. Tough case. That was the first day of a week-long summon, though. Lil thought for a moment, then snapped her fingers. Might have just been tired. What happened next? He led me to bed. Then, fecking, she stopped, her teeth audibly grinding together as her jaw clenched. He walked out. Apparently that was his guest room. Of course, I was having none of that. Her eyes flashed, fully illuminating the break room for a moment. I snuck into his room after he fell asleep and tried to use his dreams. It, she said, biting her words, was a waste of time. Didn't even have any dreams at all. Lil winced. So, of course, I figured like you did. Assumed that he was tired and get some the next day. She giggled again, and the cheap table rattled a bit as the room shifted and rumbled in time to the sound. You know what they say about eschewing. Same deal. All fecking week. Lil's eyes went wide. How? No way the weekend went the same way. Belle slammed a fist against the wall as she paced, an audible crack accentuating the dent her hand left behind. She glanced at it and made a quick gesture, smiling wryly as it faded away. I wish. No, the weekend was worse. How could he possibly? Lil began, staring at Belle. Make it worse than that. The weekend is why I'm heading to DR. Belle sat down at the counter. So he hands me an ice dress, tells me to put it on. Somehow I managed to convince myself that we finally got to do something. She laughed. I know, naive of me. At this point, no. Instead, we leave his house. Oh. Oh no, don't tell me. Yes, Lil. Belle shuddered, hugging herself as she did. He was taking me on a date. Lil shivered, seeming to shrink into herself as she did. That pervert. Right. He took me out for dinner, and even worse. She stood back and began pacing faster than before, back and forth. Even worse. He did things like he held my hands and complimented me. Lil shrieked, her form going almost incoherent as a mass of black wings suddenly seemed to cover her. That absolute pervert. That absolute pervert. Who compliments a girl before he fucks her? It still gets worse. Belle reached up and grabbed the clip from her hair. We went shopping together, and he bought me this. She brandished it towards Lil before throwing it against the wall. This accessory, this gift. No way. Lil's eyes followed the clip's short flight path further. That's, what kind of, And Belle interrupted, stopping her pacing to slump against the wall. When we got home, he took me to bed and still didn't do anything with me. Because how could a pervert like him do something normal? No, he just hugged me and fell asleep like that. And then the contract ended, and I was back here. Lil shuddered, getting up from the table and moving over to embrace Belle. You poor thing, she said, massaging her. That sounds horrible. It was. Belle leaned into Lil's ministrations. But the worst thing he did, she blushed, lighting the whole room in a lambent glow. What kind of pervert calls a girl cute in public? End of story. Story number 2. What? No black holes. Written by Harry's Mule. So they still can't make black holes? No. But not even little ones? Not yet. Have they tried? Not really. They know about them, right? Yeah. They've even got images of them. How do they do that? They aren't stupid. They just have some gaps in their knowledge. They actually did some amazing engineering to see them. Radio telescopes on different sides of the planet all working in concert. They can do all that, but they can't make them. It hasn't really occurred to them. They don't know why they would. But how do they get around? They still really like wheels. They've had wheels for tens of thousands of years. Actually, much longer, but there is a proto-human culture before that in. I'm sure that's great, but that's not my point. They don't know how to levitate yet. That's not entirely true. They can do it with magnets and superconductors. Again, that should be so far beyond the tech that doesn't have black holes. As I said, they aren't stupid. They use wires to communicate. They have relay satellites as well. Yes, but that is all limited to sight. It's amazing that they compute anything like this. Their computers aren't getting any faster, but they have got very good at parallel processing. Well, they have to. Everything is limited to light speed. They don't want to break causality. No one wants to. You get used to the side effects quickly enough. Yes, it is better than the resource drain that you could cause in the long run. Look, I know we aren't supposed to, but at some point we have to drop a hint, right? As fun as it is watching them go around in circles with all their silly workarounds, they will get there eventually, if by chance as much as ingenuity. We have. You what? Yeah, pretty blatantly. They just call it cosmic radiation and ignore it. They think it's a common phenomenon. Are we sure that they aren't stupid? They are just very sure of themselves. Maybe we could just be less subtle. We really have pushed the bounds as far as we can go. We'll repopulate the galaxy before too long, I'm sure. It's just a matter of seeing beyond the end of their noses, to use the human phrase. Right, yes, they're made of meat, protruding chemical sensors. Maybe they just aren't cut out for the universe. They're not the strangest we've encountered. No, but the slowest, yes. Well, meat does limit your tolerance for external forces. Can you imagine what will happen to them when they escape? Our simulations are very fascinating. Yes, I'm sure. Well, I'll check in again in another hour after I've finished these next 1,000 reviews and had a break. Maybe this will be their lucky day. Takes that long for them to disseminate ideas, let alone act on them. Well, nevertheless, keep up the monitoring, as frustrating as it must be. Very good, sir. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video.